Hello, gorgeous soul. Welcome to Susie's Enchanted Crossroads. I'm Susie, and this podcast helps you navigate your journey through the crossroads by taking a deeper look into witchcraft and spirituality. So settle in, grab your beverage of choice, and let's get this episode going. Hello, gorgeous souls. As promised, I have a very special guest with me on the pod today, and I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, I am Abella, and you can find me on TikTok and Instagram. But I'm known as the Minimalist Witch. I am an occultist, a teacher of the occult, and a demonologer myself. And I'm so excited to be here with you. I'm a jack of many trades, but in regards to my spiritual practice, that is where I land. Although philosophically, I would say I'm also a Taoist. So
Hmm.
it's kind of a hodgepodge of things, but that's me.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you on today. Um, and just like many of my guests, I met Abella like on TikTok. And I remember I was coming into my spiritual work, I myself being an eclectic witch because I am also a jack of all trades. And my first video that popped up on my For You page was Lunchtime with Demons. And I was like, yes, tell me more. And so I was very intrigued. I think I liked like every single video. The way you go in depth with everything in like a short span of seconds, especially when TikTok first started. I was like, dang, you just got to the point. It was so clear and concise and automatic follow.
Oh,
That was
thank
me.
you. Yeah,
Um,
I'm still making them. That's what's hilarious. I've been making them for
mhm.
years now. But there's just so many demons
There are.
to cover.
And you wouldn't think, and the thing that piqued my interest was I was starting from the ground up, coming into my spiritual practice, being comfortable, with the word witch and being raised Catholic. It's like, oh, demons are bad, the devil, Lucifer, all of that. Do you fear it? And a lot of it was like I can see how we fear what we don't know. And what had me asking a lot of questions was, okay, well, number one, I'm Hispanic, so you can't be throwing that on me. And then two, being having indigenous roots, I was like, this just the Catholic religion, the way that it was going to church. There's some aspects of it that I was like, I have questions. But I digress. What initially drew you to the practice of working with demons? Was there a personal turning point that sparked your interest? How did you come into it?
Yeah, I think it's unique for everyone. I find that everyone makes their way into whatever their practice is in their own unique fashion. But similarly, I do find I do find a lot of commonality with people and demonology, which is not surprising because we're creatures of habit. But I was also Christian and had been my whole life and was proud to be so. There was no part of me that was truly unhappy. It was more that I just didn't feel I belonged. And I didn't like that when questions arose, they were not entertained. Now,
Mhm.
where I grew up, I was one of few Christians because I grew up uh, dominantly around Judaism. And
Mm.
so I don't know how familiar you are with Judaism, but it's really encouraged to ask questions.
Mhm.
It really is. And a lot of my friends, we would talk about religion, and I would say I have questions and I shouldn't really ask these questions. And my friends would be like, "What? Why? Why
Yeah.
not?" Questions. And I was like, okay. So I jokingly say if you want to leave the church, the best thing you can do is read the Bible.
Hmm.
Um, and so I switched different faiths quite often growing up. I was trying to find where I fit in. I mean, even to the point of becoming an incredibly Orthodox Mormon at a certain point
Wow.
uh, in my early 20s and, well, mid 20s. And but the occult always fascinated me. I was fascinated at a very young age because I've always been able to communicate with things that were not necessarily seen by other people. And I'd make justifications for them. Like it was an angel, it was someone's loved one that wanted to talk to their loved one because they're in heaven, or
Mhm.
it was this, that, or the other thing. And unfortunately, a lot of people telling me no, it's the devil. I'm really
Mhm.
grateful. I'm really grateful to them now because it was, but not, but not in the way that they saw it.
Mhm.
And I knew that something was wrong. I knew that if Christianity wasn't right, which I knew it wasn't right, then everything else I knew was also wrong, and that it needed to be challenged. And so my process began, ironically, with Buddhism and Taoism and more Eastern practices to help me become more mindful and help me like honestly rediscover and reclaim who I am, not
Mhm.
inside of a religion, but who I am as a person. Because I didn't know who I was outside of structured religion.
Mhm.
And that also opened the door for me to revisit a concept that had fascinated me, which was alchemy and the occult. And so I started to do that. And what better way to deconstruct than to address what the so-called problem was to begin with,
Right.
which would be demons and witchcraft and all of these things that I was so scared of, because I felt at a very young age that I was more prone to it because of the abilities that I had. And yeah, that was really it. So the journey started slow, and most of my focus was on mindfulness and meditation.
Mhm.
And in doing so, your direct connection to your personal clair abilities, so your spiritual abilities, are directly connected to the amount of self-awareness you have. And so mindfulness and meditation is your first class ticket to having a better relationship with your clairs and your psychic abilities. And so in doing so, I had started with the greater and lesser keys of Solomon and started studying demonolatry in a more formal slash high ritual perspective. And in reading that, I noticed that I wasn't alone. I
Mhm.
wasn't alone when I was doing that. There was definitely a shift in energy in the room. There was conversations in my head that weren't mine. There was answers to some of my questions that I could have never known. Universal knowledge being dropped on me uh, in ways that I couldn't have I couldn't have known. And it became very clear to me that these entities were not just ideas, but they were very real. And I wanted to maintain authenticity and sovereignty on my journey on the left hand path. And it has been a difficult and yet very rewarding journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I got into it.
That's beautifully said. Touching a lot of points on a lot of my listeners out there, and even for myself, when we start, I did a couple of episodes about tapping into the clairs and what they are, knowing lesser known clairs and the more ones that you hear most often. But as I was growing up, it was you don't see anything, and we got to go and we got to go pray about it because I would hear. So I have my clairaudience, and my sister would see a lot of shadows. So it's like shadow people, shadow figures, and of course it freaks everybody out. But how do demons help individuals confront, I guess, their darker and lighter aspects? Because many people fear the infernal due to religious trauma or what we see in Hollywood. So, how can people overcome that fear and embrace working with demonic energies for their personal growth?
Yeah, I think you'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, well, demons are great for helping you with shadow work."
Hmm.
You're going to hear a lot of people say, like, demons, you're dealing with the light and the dark aspects, the male, the male or female energies, or your masculine, feminine, divine. And you hear a lot of people really, really pull on duality. And that is a way to work with them. If you want to perceive them as shadow like beings, or beings that are darker in nature, and so they'll help you navigate those darker aspects of yourself, you can see them that way, and they will fill that role for you if that is what you want.
Hmm.
The thing is within, well, I'm going to call them infernals, but
Hmm.
um the thing is that they are not necessarily, um they're not human, but they are incredibly flexible
Hmm.
and malleable, and in lots of ways they're incredible at adapting to what a human wants. And
Hmm.
so if that is what you want to work on with them, if you want to call them in and you're like, I need to break down this ego or my arrogance or whatever it is, and I want to be a better person by doing so, and I want to be a stronger, more powerful, like, which, then go for it. It's a transactional approach to working with them, and they'll, like I said, they'll fill that role because they're fucking intelligent. And
Hmm.
can I swear? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, 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 yes. Yeah.
They're incredibly intelligent and highly evolved. But I challenge further, and this is something that is like very specific to me as a teacher and very specific to me as a coach and an educator on these entities. But I challenge further. Seeing them as a shadow figure or a darker entity, period, acknowledges Christianity, whether you like it or not.
Okay.
And so if you are going to negate Christianity, then you need to negate the concept that they are these shadow, darker, infernal beings. The concept of hell is not even biblical. The concept of hell is a novel written nearly 300 years ago. Thanks to an
Exactly.
author, we have this concept. And so are they beings that are living in hell that we are working with? No, they really aren't. And what they are is appropriated divine entities from multiple religions, having gotten shoved into a catalog in the Greco-Roman period. And so my suggestion would be to research them as far back as you possibly can to their origin. What did they do as an origin entity? I'm going to use Abraxas as an example because I'm currently in the process of breaking down his origin. But his origin goes all the way back to an Indian god, Mitra, which then moved to Persia as Mithra. And then in Zoroastrianism, he became like a sub god. And then after that, he was adopted by Greece and Rome. And when that happened, he was serving basically, he became a god of the Roman army and then was demonized when Christianity came through because
Wow.
that's just what happened. And
Hmm.
when he was seen as just in his origin state, he was seen as a god of light, the god
Yeah.
of the morning star. Sound familiar?
Mm,
So,
yeah.
and Abraxas is it's a word for cycles. And so he was, as Mishra, he was seen as the god of cycles, cycles of the sun. He was a sun god. He was this god that brought in the cycles of the sun and the seasons of the year. And so a lot of things that were represented with him 5 days. And so of course, later on, when when they were trying to rename him, which is a lot of what happened to these entities, is they were renamed and cataloged. And he was specifically cataloged by a demonologist called, well, demonologist, excuse me, a demonologist called Colin DePlancy, was a Catholic. So
Mm,
we have this catalog of demons, and so are we going to work with them like that? Why would we
right.
work with them like that? Work with them
Hmm.
in the same capacity that Colin, this Catholic old white man, decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a catalog of demons, when really he was making a catalog of anything that became to Christianity.
Hmm.
And so you have to like really consider, if I'm going to work with this entity, what am I asking of them? and
Yeah.
and is it in alignment with this catalog, or is it in an alignment with their origin? So you can work with them, to answer your question, which was, I think, excuse me, a long kind of roundabout way to answer it, but frankly, you can work with them however you want.
Yeah, there's no set
Want
rules,
something, they
but
will tell you. Yeah, not only will they tell you, they'll suggest another entity.
very interesting. And
Yeah.
going on that, we're so used to, at least in Christianity, going by this book, going by what we've been told. Not, and this is where it's like, you got to go past Google, and to really go into depth and into your research is what I always tell my audience, right? Like, do your research, what do you feel comfortable with, but you got to go back far enough and really see what happened when we were colonized. And that's a lot of like fear-based and people wanting land and what you had. And so we literally put the fear in there and we have, like you just said, we had Abraxas and then you're renaming them and then all of a sudden it's this whole new thing. And then we start getting into that fear-based mindset. Okay, so earlier you discussed about meditating with infernals. Do you see a difference in meditating with infernals than meditating, maybe if you've done so in the past with angels or your spirit guides and ancestors?
No, no,
Absolute same.
absolutely the same. If anything, it's easier for me. I find their energy to be really grounded,
Mhm,
and there's a lot of weight to it, so it's very apparent. It's not very subtle.
mhm.
It's every single entity has their own signature. So those signatures vary obviously from entity to entity. But I don't see a difference in my approach at all. I would approach every single entity with the same level of respect or the same process.
How about when you connect with them? I notice a difference when not in how would start the meditation, but and this is just because, some of my guides are very blunt. And when I started receiving like different energy and I had gotten the reading with you, I
Mhm.
had noticed a lot of like Lucifer's energy, and like you said, it's very grounded, and for me, very funny. And I was like, we play in here? And then so in that sense, as any newbie or, green witch here, um, it's almost like you said, I had to deconstruct that very harsh, very structured Catholic, like, okay, we sit because I also work with Santa Muerte and I know she enjoys prayer, but I'm also getting to the point when working with her, very loving, but also that almost that tough love, that push.
Mhm.
And that kind of energy, it almost threw me off in a sense where I'm like, oh, we're playing around, but it could also be what I'm bringing to the table, obviously. Like, hey, I need help with a trauma in writing, which is something I've been very open about in past episodes. And as far as working with Lucifer, when I had gotten a reading from you, other energies, I had King Belial around, and I don't want to butcher the name, but King Payman.
Good job. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of that energy is it's almost feeling it. It's almost like feeling my way through family that's always been there versus like the ancestors that come through. It's like not that they don't come in loving, but it's almost like, hey, what are we doing? Are you ready to step into this realm?
I jokingly say that talking with dead people or ancestors is like playing a game of charades. Because I find that I don't know. I find that it's not as clear or
Mm-hmm,
as easy as when I'm talking with the divine. But I also find that when I am communicating with ancestors, there is always like there's a mean to an end. Like they're like, what's going on? What are we doing? Why are we here? Or like what's like why did you do that or whatever it is.
mm-hmm,
I don't feel that with divinity. I find that they are more inclined to just be, to just embrace mindfulness and become aware with you. And I think it's because it would make sense to me that they have different, their alternative or like their agenda
mm-hmm.
is different. They are trying to co-evolve with you. They're trying to connect with you on on and yeah, co-evolve is the best way I can explain it.
Yeah,
So it's just it's a different interaction, but I don't think like I don't think that's true for everyone. I think that's what I'm trying to say is that like
right.
I may just be lucky that I have a much easier time communicating with the divine than I do with ancestors, where I think some people might feel really like that comes easy for them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think it depends on the person.
Yeah. I as soon as I started meditating, and I had been asked this question. I don't know if you have any different or you want to weigh in differently, but it's almost like, well, how do you even get started? Like, how do you meditate to the infernal? Like, how, knowing now how you connect with your spirit team and the universe, how do you connect with the infernal, like to not upset them? And the first thing is like, why do you think they're upset? That's my
Exactly.
first thing. Why do you think they're
Yeah.
upset that you feel almost automatically indebted
Yeah.
to working with any um, spirit team of yours when you're asking for help, when you're asking for insight, when you're reaching out with a question? And I feel that has a lot to do with growing up, maybe in a structured religion, but sometimes when I get people that are interested in the craft or getting into it, it's like, well, how do I know? Well, not them, but how do you know that it's not Lucifer's not going to turn around and then do something bad?
Mm.
And I'll let you answer this, but I'm like, because I don't see him as bad. And it's going back to doing your research, and I know Lucifer's just the one that's usually everyone knows, right? But just super popular, but any infernal can help with very many different aspects of your life.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you get that question from students or clients as you work with them, or maybe what is the most common question that you get from people that are just starting out?
Oh, that.
Yeah.
That is the most common question. How do you know that they're not going to kill you?
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why I laugh is because like the answer is really really simple. It's because the the reason you think they're going to kill you is created within the bounds of a religion I don't practice.
Hmm.
So I'm not Christian. Christianity has taught you that anything that goes by the title demon is going to hurt you. I am not Christian. In
Hmm.
other words, I don't acknowledge them by that title that was given to them, nor do I acknowledge the descriptions that were given to them. Like, I didn't go ahead and meet with Amon and say, like, hey, so I'm really excited to meet you. I was concerned you were going to vomit fire on me, but I'm excited to meet you. Like, I read what was written and I take it with an absolute grain of salt, and I approach them with dignity and
Hmm.
respect and patience, and I let the rest of it kind of come to life. And I don't feel the fear because the fear is literally built on the back of a religion I don't recognize.
Hmm.
And so this is why I suggest to so many people, if you are still scared of working with demons, then priority numero uno is working on your deconstruction of Christianity prior to going into it. Even if you're an atheist, okay? Like,
Hmm.
even if you did not live a day in your life from a Christian perspective, Christianity is built into our culture, it's built into our television shows, it's built into entertainment, it's built into the world we live in. Even license plates say, in God we trust. So
Yeah,
the reality is, even if you grew up without a single ounce of Christianity, you were indoctrinated. And that is just that is an unfortunate part of being an American.
yeah, no kidding.
So yeah, so you need to do that work. You need to question why you are having these feelings about these particular entities. And some of the most seasoned occultists I know, these are still arguments I have with them. So
Wow.
this is not necessarily like a dominantly popular concept in demonolatry. And so I would say that I am still a little bit on the outside when it comes to this, but it's because I argue, like, logically, logistically, I don't see how you can believe that these entities are these things that have been
Hmm.
said about them without acknowledging that you are giving credit and or belief to Christianity.
Hmm.
So I think it's really important that we challenge these things as people who are working with these entities.
I agree. Another thing that I bring up is besides your upbringing in organized religion and obviously quote unquote Hollywood, is that not everybody is Wiccan and believe in that threefold law and it's going to come back
Yeah,
to you 3 times. And so I'm like, that's essentially the same thing, just something different.
yeah,
I'm not Wiccan. I don't believe in that. If I'm how TikTok is sometimes their social media, it's like, oh, you can't hex that person. It's going to come back to you threefold. That's not what I believe. That's not my practice. And a lot of times, people that go in without doing the proper research or coming into the practice with what they were trying to leave behind as far as organized religion are still bringing it into their practice. And part of being a witch or a spiritual person, especially that I know for some, being a witch still has that negative connotation, just like demon has that negative connotation. I'm a Hispanic, so being called a bruja is like something very, very negative. It still is. But when we go back and we date, like why women were witch, called witches and burned at the stake, not that they were witches, but because of what people wanted, and they were herbalists and when townspeople would go to them for healing instead of the doctor with then it was a threat, but it's to keep questioning, keep pushing, keep keep asking. That's exactly why I had started this podcast on my own, is to get those questions. And a lot of questions came from infernals, and I have a lot coming in for Santa Muerte. So, besides that being the obvious question, is there another one or a way that you recommend people can get started on either learning histories, or maybe they feel really called to it, that say they listen to this episode like, you know what, I've been really feeling the pull. How can I start at least either meditating, or I feel really drawn to working with infernals? How would you suggest they begin?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I've been doing like today I just taught a class on research, and then yesterday I did a live on research, and
Hmm.
I think I'm going to be holding a master class for research next month because it in itself is a skill, being able to
Yeah.
do research properly. And so, one, don't beat yourself up if you're feeling like you're coming up short. You are going to come up short. That is the name of the game with this. You are basically dissecting religions within religions within religions, and you're dissecting text that is written for political gain within
Mm,
within the Middle East, where in which you do
yeah.
not. So there's a lot of things that you won't understand. I mean, do you read Sanskrit? Like, are you going to be able to read some of these documents? And when they are translated, are you checking to see who the translator is? Are you checking to make sure that they're not, that, like, what are their political perspectives and religious views? Are you seeing biases? Are you capable of seeing through them? So, like, the reality is, research is hard, and there should be no end goal in the practice of working with infernals. You should not be working with infernals going, I can't wait to figure out the origin of Lucifer. The reality is, if that's your case, you can join the club.
Yeah.
You'll get your card in the mail. um but the reality is, like homie, get on that train and just like ride it out and enjoy it. Let the research and the education side of it become a part of your experience and a part of your excitement. One of the things for me is it brings me so much closer to the religions of the world, and as that happens, I have so much respect for the power and strength of religions everywhere, and the beauty of mythology and folklore, and how
Yeah.
it shapes the world around us.
Mhm.
And it's incredible. So my suggestion would be, get your hands on any grimoire. Doesn't matter what it is, find a grimoire and read about it. Read about these entities, even though it's saying like Astaroth will have the worst breath of you'll ever smell, like whatever, like I said, just read about it. See if there's an entity that you're feeling really drawn to. See if there's one that you're like, wow, I can't stop reading about Belial. So then, take to Google
Mhm.
and look up, what does Belial mean? You'll find out that it actually in Hebrew it is said as Balial, and Balial means the worthless one. So
Mhm.
then you go, wait a minute, the worthless one, that's not a name. That's a nickname, and a really shitty one at that. Okay, so then
Yeah.
who is this entity? So that's when you'll start to see, oh, Belial is mentioned in these apocryphal texts. So then you're like, what? The Apocalypse of Abraham, the Ascension of Isaiah, these are apocryphal texts. I should get my hands on those. And you can. You can go on Amazon right now and type in the Ascension of Isaiah, apocryphal text, and there will be a little book that you can buy. You can also look up the PDF. You can type that in too. Read that. Read what he did. Read it. You'll learn about King Hezekiah, and you'll learn about Isaiah, and like you'll learn about King Belial's one of his names. And then even that name, you'll get that name and do research on that, and that will take you back even further somewhere else where that name means another thing, and yada yada. So my suggestion is, doing research should be fun. Get a grimoire, read something that excites you. If you feel connected, then start doing research. And now, while you're doing this research, FYI, that is devotional offerings.
Yes.
You are devoting time and energy to understanding their lore. That is a devotional offering. So go ahead, light a tea light, draw their sigil, and keep doing the research, and you'll see shit change. You'll feel
Yeah.
shit change. You'll see shit change all of a sudden. Like you're seeing scorpions everywhere, and you're like, why the fuck am I seeing scorpions everywhere? And then you find out that Belial is associated with them, and you're like, wait a minute, why is this happening? And then you just start to see the synchronicities and the patterns and the signs, and it's amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I I will tell you, okay, this is how I had started besides um catching on TikTok and Lunchtime with Demons. And I was just like learning, I'm like, I've never heard of this before. And then someone had told me, hey, look online. There's this occult tarot. And of course, I bought it. And because for myself, I can get, oh, I love going down the rabbit hole. Like, I'll probably be in one of your classes, I'm not gonna lie. And just shuffling this deck. All right, let's see. Who do we got here? Azazel? Cool. Ace of Wands. Teaches holy secrets, instructs how to make weapons and the art of seduction. Art of seduction. I'm about to teach a class on the art of seduction. So guess what I'm gonna be
Guess who you're gonna
I
be calling on?
guess who I'm gonna be calling on, guess who I'm gonna be researching on. And I think for a lot of people that are starting out, and I was one of them, we think we have to do the most right away. And I have to make an altar and I have to have these candles and I have to purchase and purchase and purchase and get these herbs and whatnot. And a lot of times that's not the case. And I do stress to my listeners and my followers on my socials, you don't have to do that. You don't
Mhm.
have to be outwardly showcasing, your Pinterest altars. And that's a lot of social media where we get sucked into it doesn't look like this person's. And that's where I stress everybody's practice is different. So thank you for saying that. Just reading and researching that in itself, if you want to think of it, is an offering, is devotion.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
100%. And they see it and they appreciate it. I mean,
Yeah.
they really appreciate it. It's such a beautiful offering.
I think knowledge, seeking out knowledge and going deeper into what you're searching for is so beautiful.
Mhm.
And as I stress out to my listeners, research, research, ask different people. Because I was in that boat. It's like, ugh, I don't want to ask a question. I'm gonna sound so stupid. But there's no stupid question when you're starting out because you have all the questions. Ask, different people. And if it doesn't land, if you're like, I don't know about that, let me ask a different person or let me research it a little bit deeper. That's where you start enriching your life. And that's where maybe you get called to different things. Like I said, I'm eclectic. I love everything. I want to learn it all. And some people are just very drawn to, say, herbalism or being a green witch or a kitchen witch. And that's awesome. That's where you feel your calling. But if you didn't know about other facets, then how did you get there? So
That's true.
I don't want to I benefit, I think, just in the divine, and just meditating is just a beautiful benefit. But how else can we invoke infernals to our personal practices outside of meditation and maybe doing research?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so meditation is it's important to acknowledge what meditation really is, which is
Mhm.
it is being mindful. And well, sorry, meditation is the act of being mindful.
Yes.
And so we do it so much more than you recognize. And if you're interested in some books that I think are really helpful when it comes to
Mhm.
meditation, John Kabat-Zinn is one of my favorite. He wrote a book called Meditation is Not What You Think, and oh, the other one is wherever you go, there you are, which it's a wonderful book. Anyway, so I'm a really big fan of his perspective on meditation. He helps simplify it in a way that you recognize, holy cow, I've been doing this all along, and I've been doing this really well, and it helps you kind of break down a lot of that self-doubt that we love to build up.
Hmm.
Um, so once you acknowledge, like, oh, being mindful is meditation, and then you go for a walk outside and you're listening to your headphones and you're going for a walk down the street and you're noticing that, like, the song that's playing, like, all of a sudden there's a lyric in that song that you feel like you haven't heard before, and they're talking about ravens, and then you get to your car and there's a giant raven sitting in a tree squawking at you. And then you get to the store and there's a woman wearing a shirt and it has like a big old crow on the front of it. And you're like, what is going on? And then, you get home and you realize, oh my gosh, like Azazel is associated with crows. That's amazing. He must have been around all day. So then, the next day you're like, hey, Azazel, thank you so much for spending the day with me. I'd actually love if you spent today with me as well. And I'll do my best to like keep my eye out for synchronicities or for signs. And it's so silly, but it's really that simple.
Hmm.
It
It really
really,
is.
yeah. And there's other things too. Like my daughter's been really sick this week, and um we were sitting in the like waiting room, and we're just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there and sitting there, and I was like, okay, for the love of all things, like we really, like, they need to get their stuff together here.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there, and I finally was like, Lucifer, can you please help?
Mm-hmm.
And I started to like trace his sigil on the wall behind me, just like lightly with my finger, and just like over and over and over doing it, and it became kind of like this thing in my head, like I was seeing his sigil glow, and I was like explaining to him, like, she's really sick, she's really bored, what kid wants to sit in the hospital
Waiting
waiting
room.
room, like nobody wants to, like, please, if we can just move forward without hurting anyone, without like being unfair to anyone, but like if we could just get the process rolling, I would really appreciate it. And within
Yeah.
like seconds, we were called in, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, like, thank you, Lucifer. And even if we weren't called in right that second, it had become a mantra in a weird way. Like I had felt like drawing his sigil was bringing me a bit of relief. Um, and yeah, he was definitely with me.
Hmm.
It was lovely. It was lovely. I hope that answers.
Is
I
Oh
think
yeah,
that.
it does for sure. And for myself, that's what I stress with people because I'm a Reiki practitioner, and I'm like, your meditation doesn't have to be 2 hours of you sitting in silence. That's not what that is. It is being mindful. If anything, like you said, go take a walk. And it's funny how you brought up music because that is exactly how I reach out to my guides. And if I'm going to reach out, let's say to Lucifer or King Belial, hey, with whatever song you pick next, it's something I need to hear. I'm just feeling this energy, or can you help me through this problem? And it's really being mindful of the song, the title, what does the artwork look like, and just keeping it with me throughout the day. And like you said, it is really that simple. And that goes not just for infernals, that goes for any of your guides, for even your higher self. That's all it really takes. Um, I feel like we take this craft to like the next level, and we think we gotta, on the full moon, on the Friday the 13th, we gotta do all this X, Y, and Z. And it doesn't really, I mean, you really
Yeah,
could,
yeah. I mean,
but it
we
doesn't
live
need to be
in
that way.
we live in an instant gratification society
Hmm.
that makes us feel inadequate if we do anything that's like slightly. out of the norm,
Yeah.
or it's like, I don't know. It's like if you order something from Amazon and it's like, oh, it's not going to be here for 4 days. All of a sudden you're like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
What? I have Prime. It should be here tomorrow. And it's like, you can wait 4 days. I know you
Yeah.
can. I know you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I jokingly say, do you think witches in the 1600s were upset because the metaphysical store was closed?
Yeah.
Like, I
That
don't
is
think
beautiful.
so.
I'm going to start using that. That is awesome.
I really don't think so.
Yeah. And the same goes for it's like when I do candle orders or oils, it's like and I have to put that disclaimer. It's like, okay, these are I like to wait for this oil for the waxy moon, and that's not gonna happen for a few and blah blah blah. I'm not Amazon, I am one person.
Mhm.
And I do not ship next day. Sorry, not sorry, but at least you know all of the things that I'm putting into it, energy, herbs, who I call in, et cetera, et cetera. How do you, I'm not sure if you've had this happen with any of your students or maybe yourself. How do you, I guess, because we're so used to the instant gratification, if we were to work with an infernal and we don't feel the energy right away, we don't get the sign, we're not feeling connected. How do you keep that spirit up? Like instead of just, I don't want to say give up, but it's like, oh man, I guess they don't want to work with me. Have you had that happen with any of your students or yourself? How do you
Oh,
keep the morale up?
100%. It's very common.
Hmm.
They may not want to work with you.
Hmm. Point blank period. Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that I'm sorry, but like that means that you need to work on your issues with rejection.
Mm.
That means that you need to work on yourself.
Yeah.
There's a demon that has been in my experience for years, and I was like, how come we don't work together? And I said it to him quite a few times. And one day, he and I was having lunch with him. This is very funny because it sounds like I went to like a restaurant with him. But I was truly just eating lunch at work, and it was back when I was working at a shop in LA, and I was like, I could feel he was in the room, and I was like, I know you're here, and I heard in my head like, yeah, and I like kicked the chair and like moved it so he could like sit, and I was like,
Hmm.
just sit then. If you're here, then be here. And he was like, okay. And I was like, we should work together formally. And he was like, okay. I don't see the point in that, but well, okay. I was like, well, then what's the point of you being here?
Hmm.
Huh? And he was like, why don't you do something instead of being concerned about me? Why don't you like eat your food and do something? Like, why don't you make a TikTok video about me then? And I was like, cool.
Mm.
And he was like, yeah, you can call it lunchtime with demons. And that was Prince Stolas. And that's the first video I ever made.
Wow.
Him. And so now that I'm writing the book, and almost done, I did have like a very funny conversation with him where I was like, are we gonna ever work together formally? And he was like, seriously, like for real, you're still on this? He's like, you don't actually want to work with me. He's like, what it is it's your ego. Your ego is obsessed with the idea that
Mm.
I'm rejecting you. And I was like, but what did I do to be rejected? And he's like, you didn't do anything. We just don't need to have a formal relationship. I like you like
Interesting.
me. We worked on a cool project together. Like I inspired you to do something. I've enjoyed watching you do it. I pop in periodically to check on you. Is like, what else do you need from me? Other than like
Hmm.
to make yourself feel better that I'm around.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is such a great point. And I have a lot of abandonment issues and rejection issues from being a kid. And so he, in a weird way, helped me heal that without intentionally doing so.
Yeah.
And it's a really unique relationship that I have with him. But I am very grateful to Prince Stolas for that reason.
That is so awesome. What a beautiful origin story. 'Cause I wondered, I was like, I wonder how she got started with this. And sometimes it's just an idea that hatches, but
No, it was very, very, very much demon inspired.
very, wow.
Yeah.
I yeah, wow, that hit for me. Like just being because it to be rejected obviously doesn't feel nice, but
No.
sometimes and I have seen practitioners say like, "Oh, I've worked with um Apollo and we were cool and we were chill and then all of a sudden he was gone." And it's like, "Where'd you go? Why'd you leave? Like, why are you leaving me here?" And it's almost that grieving process of all of a sudden you just up and leave. Like, why can't you stay with me forever? Like why can't we be cool like that? And sometimes it's just they lead you on a journey, or maybe just, hey, don't be so obsessed. I don't know why that Mariah Carey song. Why are you so obsessed with me? And it's like, girl, get a life. Like,
Hmm.
but I love that. That really hit for me the way you said that. And I'm sure it's gonna hit for a lot of listeners out there because I have gotten, well, I've been reaching out to this deity, and I don't really see the crows or the ravens or the whatever it is associated with them. And I have an altar and I have a this and that. And why not? Why someone else and not me? And it's like, well, I think that's just something that you're gonna have to sit with. And it's, do you really need this deity in your life? Or are they pushing you to do some work on yourself? Maybe that's just not the path that you're supposed to take right now.
And why
Uh,
did you reach out to them?
yeah.
Like consider why you reached out to them to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
What was your reason and intention in doing so? Was it just because like they seemed good on paper and you needed something? Like you were like, oh, this entity is really good at money and I'm broke, so let's do it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Is that your reason? Because if
Yeah.
that's your reason, that transaction is like it may be reciprocated, but when you are someone who is seeking transactions with entities, the stakes get much higher,
Yeah.
much higher. Like I don't seek transactions. I just want to hang out, vibe, and become a less shitty person. Like that is all I want. And so I don't have an agenda. I just want to like spend time with them. So if they reject me, like then I don't really care. But if I'm gonna go to them and be like, hey, I need $100,000, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And I expect it because I bought you a candle, a
Mm.
crystal, and some incense. They're gonna be like, bitch, that I need a little bit more than a that
Mm-hmm.
for $100,000.
Yeah.
What else are you gonna do for me, ma'am?
Mm-hmm.
Adam, this is a Wendy's. What are you, like, like they're not gonna, that's not gonna fly.
Yeah. Another thing I've had to tell them, just answering questions off the fly is just because you're invoking them doesn't mean one, they're going to work with you, and two, that it's something that you feel that you own. And because I always get almost like one end of the scale, right? It's like, well, I need to do all these things. How can I do it? And I'm indebted to them. It's like, well, now that I'm invoking you, I need all these things. I'm like, you're taking a lot of like your view of like how religion is, and you're bringing it into here where that's not that's not what this is. So thank you for that. I'm gonna switch
Exactly.
gears really quick.
Yeah,
For
I'm ready.
those that are okay, I'm ready. I want to
It's
work
like,
with
yeah,
infernals. Like I'm listening to this episode. I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm ready to make that step. Because
okay.
some of my listeners are they're beginning, and okay, I know how to begin. Now, if I'm ready to be, and like I said, your practice is your own, you don't got to share it with anybody. However, if my grandma were to hear this podcast, she's not. But how, besides the you don't owe anybody an explanation or give a fuck, but people are curious, how can someone explain very brief? Because I get this question a lot with Reiki. How does Reiki work if we're at a distance and you're not even with me and I have to go through the whole energy work? How can someone just short, quick, and simple, if they were trying to explain to maybe someone living in the house with them, their candle for Lucifer, let's just say, and they get some kind of backlash or that fear that gets pointed to them? How do you direct either your clients or your students on how to have a conversation with people that are skeptical? A good skeptic, because I've told people, there's going to be skeptics that are curious, and there's skeptics that just want to prove you wrong. The ones that want to prove you wrong, they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So it's just not worth your breath. You can say, hey, well, this is what I do. Are you curious? Or you're just going to be an asshole. If they're going to be an asshole, then don't waste your breath because you're just going to go around in circles and they're just going to want to make their point like right. Like, I'm right about this. You're going to go to hell. That demon's going to take over your body, kind of thing. So, for the curious skeptic out there,
Because, okay, so this is something that I teach a lot of my students is like,
mhm.
no matter what script you have set aside, like, even if you have a script literally set aside, where you were like, I am called a demonolater. I work with demons and or worship them. I am a demonologist, which is the study of demons. I am not associated with the Satanic Temple, but I do identify as a as a Satanist. You know what I mean? Like, if you
Yeah.
want, you can go through your script if you really want. You know, the word daemon means divine being, and in the
Mhm.
Greco-Roman period, we had the
Yeah.
category. Like, you can do that. No one cares. So what you really need to do is be like, I am happy. I am happy. I'm thriving. Look at my life. Like, look at the things that I'm doing. I
Mhm.
am not afraid. Thank you for your concern. I see them as appropriated entities from religions all across the world. I am also not Christian. I do not identify with any Christian values and or Christian beliefs. And unfortunately, the way you are perceiving demons is through the lens of Christianity. And so I think we have two very different ideas of what that word means.
Mhm.
And what you think I'm working with, you are wrong. Like, you do not know or understand what I am working with. And at that point, I no longer want to have the conversation unless you're going to approach it through the lens of curiosity.
Mhm.
And if you are willing to, then I'm happy to go into depth. But if not, then I would really like to just leave this where it's at.
Beautiful. Hmm.
I mean, that's the best way to handle it. Because some people will be like, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't want to hear about it. And other people will be like, fuck, like, strap me in, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let, let's talk about this. It's
Hmm.
crazy. um,
And if anything else, tell them to listen to this podcast.
yeah. Honestly, that's also I know it sounds like cheesy, but it is a great thing to have in your back pocket, which is like references,
Hmm.
like being like, oh, check out this podcast. I mean, I've even been told people have been like, oh, I sent my mom to go watch Lunchtime with Demons.
Hmm.
Like, like, if that's shit, if that's gonna work for you, then do it.
Yeah. So for my listeners out there, the way I've done things, especially as I've been dipping my toes into this, do I know everything? Obviously not. That's why I have a special guest on today to ask these questions, that has thoroughly worked with the Infernal and teaches and coaches. For myself, I can only, and I'm not explaining, but it's like, well, this is what I work with. I'm not scared. I'm not fearful. That's just something we've been taught. But if you really want to know more, this is how I got started. Lunchtime with Demons. This is the book I was reading. Um, insert title here. And if you're and then if you are gonna like get into it, then cool, we can go and get into it together. And that's where I've met some of some listeners and they're on my socials for Reiki. And
Mhm.
it's that beautiful curiosity where it's like, I thought all demons were bad. Yeah, that's what we're taught. That's what we see and on TV and in the movies, but not when you take it into your own practice.
Yeah, I love that.
Awesome.
I love that. I think I just wish more people would approach it through the lens of curiosity versus fear. You know,
Yeah.
fear is the mind killer. I stole that
Yes.
from Dune.
Yeah. And I do want to remind my listeners out there that starting at the beginning and starting slow is okay. Again, you don't need to dive. I mean, you want to dive headfirst, that's awesome, but taking things nice and slow no matter what facet you're going into. Um, just taking your time with it, grow with it, and maybe this is something you love doing, and maybe you grow from it and you find something else. This is just
Mhm.
another beautiful thing I wanted to shed some light on because I feel like a lot of us think of like, oh, we have to work with the divine, and we only think of angels and the grand universe and what have I been seeing on TikTok? Daddy in the sky, or I don't know what, Sky Daddy. And it's just breaking that barrier and, don't kick yourself. I grew up Catholic, so that's just years and years and years of that,
Mhm.
um, of what you've learned and what's been kind of shoved down your throats a bit. So it's okay to start branching out. Sky Daddy is pretty funny. I had to,
So funny.
people are so creative. Like, I don't believe in your Sky Daddy. Oh, what?
What? That's good.
Oh my goodness. I want to thank you so much for spending time with us and my listeners and sharing your expertise. You did mention teaching and classes. Is there anything you would like to share with our listeners, how they can connect with you, things that are coming up for you, how we can get in touch with you?
Yeah, I okay, so on November 1st, I am holding a 2 hour masterclass. That is something I'm quite excited about. I'm testing it out throughout this entire month with a small group of students of mine, and those alumni will also be attending the November 1st masterclass. After that, I'll still be doing one-on-one coaching for people that are interested in that for a wee bit longer. I'm not quite sure what the beginning of the year is going to look like. I do try to like shift my business every year, but I am also throwing a bunch of different sales right now just because it's the holidays. I always try to do that so that way, just in case someone was like, "Oh, I've been itching to buy a session for my mom." So the best place to find me is going to be TikTok as the Minimalist Witch, YouTube as the Mini Witch, MINNIE, like Minnie Mouse, and my website, which is abellacaress.com, and my Patreon, which is again the Mini Witch. So I'm not hard to find. Frankly, if you find me on social media, on Instagram or on TikTok, I always have a link tree. So it's like I said, I'm really not hard to find. So that's about it.
Perfect. Again, thank you so much for being here and talking about all of this and sharing your expertise. And for my listeners, I will link all of her stuff down in the show notes. So I do highly recommend. I've gotten some amazing readings from Abella, and it's eye-opening. If you're wanting to get started, I feel like that's a good way. And I think I'll be looking into these master classes and maybe one-on-ones.
No pressure,
Uh,
no pressure.
no,
I'm
yeah, I enjoy being a student, and this is just something that I've been really felt called towards. So thank you so much. All right, my listeners, don't forget every first and third Wednesday of the month, I hold a community Reiki via Zoom, and you can find that link in the show notes. Sign up. I'll have all the links on all my socials and here below. I would love to have you come in, take out all that negative energy or stagnant energy you've been having from the month before and start fresh, start new. And maybe, hey, maybe that'd be a good time with this meditation and see which infernal will come through for you. Until next time, gorgeous souls, I will see you at the crossroads.